Greetings and welcome to the Personal Project Supervisors Training video. In this video, we will explore how to assess personal project reports, which should help supervisors guide students through the process. Then, you will be able to score 2 samples on your own. Completing this course, the presentation and scoring of 2 sample projects should take about 1.5 hours total. To get 2 hours of CEU credits, you must complete the Canvas training module on or before Friday, November 8th. Then you must also attend a half-hour assessment training on the capped workday on Tuesday, March 3rd. To get comp time, log the date and time you work on the personal project on the log sheet found on Canvas. Comp time can only be earned for work time outside of the normal school day, which is 7 a.m. until 2:30 p.m. Thank you for being a supervisor, and please enjoy this presentation. Let's begin with a quick overview of the personal project. The project is an individual, inquiry-based project students complete on a topic of deep personal interest. Students will develop skills you see on your screen. Those skills are directly based on the 10 ATL skills. So, as a supervisor, what resources are available to help guide your student through the personal project process? First, the Personal Project Handbook is accessible on Canvas along with other helpful resources under the Personal Project General Resources module. All students have access to the handbook and are expected to read the information and use the examples it contains. Second, there are 2 sample project reports for you to score on Canvas. The 2 sample project reports are directly from IB and can help you determine how to accurately score project reports. Third, you have access to the IB Personal Project Scoring rubric under the Personal Project General Resources module in Canvas. Students also have access to this rubric as they write their reports, so they should know exactly what is expected in the report. Also, the IB requires at least 3 meetings between students and supervisors to occur at the beginning, middle, and end of the project. Our first meeting opportunity was the mixer meeting on Thursday, September 19th after school. If your student did not meet with you, it is his or her responsibility to contact you to set up a meeting. During the year and at these meetings, please offer feedback to students to help guide them and increase the rigor of their project. Remember, this is a student-driven project. The responsibility lies with them to complete the necessary components of the project. If at any time you have questions or concerns, please do not hesitate to contact Mrs. Drake. The major focus of the IB Personal Project is the approaches to learning or ATL skills. There are 10 skills listed on your screen. Students must demonstrate and explain their abilities in these 10 skill areas with their written project report, which is due at the end of February. These 10 skills are embedded in the IB Project Assessment rubric supervisors will use to score the project reports on the capped workday on Tuesday, March 3rd, hopefully. Again, you can find the very detailed, task-specific IB project rubric you will use to score the project under the Personal Project General Resources module in Canvas. As a reminder, students also have access to this very same rubric. Here's a quick overview of the IB Personal Project Assessment rubric you will use to assess the projects in March. Again, you can find the IB Assessment rubric on Canvas. The 4 criteria are investigating, planning, taking action, and reflecting. Each of the 4 criteria has 3 objectives that students will include in their project reports. In the next slides, we will discuss how to examine the wording of the rubric and apply it to students' projects. Remember, the IB expects a high level of rigor from our students, so supervisors should give constructive feedback to help students reach the highest levels of achievement. We should assess them fairly, accurately, and rigorously. To standardize grading, all supervisors must understand the language of the rubric in order to assess students' projects equitably. There are a lot of words on the screen. Please pause the video if you need more time to read. You'll notice some consistencies in the rubric as you read through it. For example, in Strand 1 of Criterion A, Levels 1 and 2 state a goal. Levels 3 and 4 outline a basic and appropriate goal. For Levels 5 and 6, the keywords are defining a clear and challenging goal. And for Levels 7 and 8, the keywords are defining a clear and highly challenging goal. Our students will have access to this same rubric as they write their report, and they will see examples as well. When reading their writings, please encourage them to make sure they are addressing all key terms for each strand. Let's take a look at a few sample goals and score them, shall we? Let's read through a sample of a goal. Notice the only verb is design. The student, indeed, has chosen a global context, but based on the rubric, where do you think that would score? If you scored it as a 1, you would be correct. The student has stated a goal, but it is shallow, does not address personal interest, and it is not connected to the global context. Let's try another. Here's a second sample. Notice there are 2 verbs here: research and design. While the student states he or she has a strong interest in fashion, the student does not explain why. The student states he or she has never tried designing clothes, so there is a challenge there. The global context is related but basic. Where do you think this would score? It would fit at the 4 level. The goal is outlined, but it is not detailed. I would ask this student, what kinds of fashion trends? Also, I would ask, how many clothes will you design? What will you do with them? The student also does not explain the personal interest. While the global context is relevant, there is not much detail. How about let's try one more sample? The first thing I noticed about this third sample was the length, but let's see where this writing addresses the criteria. First, I've underlined the verbs to demonstrate how complex and multi-layered this student's goal is. He or she wants to research, design, and use technology to market those designs. It's very challenging for a 10th grader. However, I wondered what fashions would be researched, and if the student would sell garments, where would the proceeds go? There is some personal connection, as this student plans to have a career in fashion, but I wondered what led this student to a love of fashion. The goal's relationship to the global context is addressed nicely, but it is not meaningfully related to all parts of the goal. While it is close to a 7, I would only score at a 6. I would encourage the student to add detail and justification to the writing. The second strand objective in Criterion A is about prior learning and subject-specific knowledge. Please pay special attention to this standard as you read Students' Criterion A in November. This has been a difficult area for students. Please notice how the wording of the task-specific clarification changes with each level increase, beginning with states prior knowledge with levels 1 and 2, and ending with analyzes the relevance and contribution of prior learning to the project with levels 7 and 8. Here, IB asks students to elaborate on what they knew about their topic before beginning, as well as identifying subject-specific knowledge. That means students must expound upon knowledge from a specific subject from school at some point. For example, if the topic is about computers, they can include what they've learned about computers in school up to this point. The third strand objective for Criterion A is about research skills. Here, the task-specific clarification from IB is very detailed. At a level 1 and 2, the student's report will have few resources, no resources cited in the report, and you would find little to no evidence of research at all. Now let's look at the detailed, task-specific clarification for levels 3 and 4 in the same strand about research skills. This is a basic level for all students, and our students should meet at least a level 3 or 4. They will have a range of sources, but maybe not a wide variety. The sources may all be websites, for example. They will have just enough research, Perhaps only 10 sources, since that is the minimum of required sources set by Mrs. Drake. Some sources will be evaluated for their reliability in the report, and there will be some citations. This is where we would expect any sophomore to be with research skills. As you read, score, or offer feedback for Criterion A, it is not bad to score students at this level. They may be at a level 8 for some strands in the rubric and hit lower levels for other strands. In reading Criterion A, Strand 3, the research skills in the 5 and 6 levels are quite substantial. Students will have a well-researched report, with a range and variety of sources, some of which will be cited in the paper, and the sources will be evaluated for reliability and relevance. Students must be able to transfer their research into action. There must be connections between their sources, prior knowledge, and subject-specific information. In this level, students effectively use their sources to complete their product. The sources must be more than just a list of things they have researched. The sources are integral to their product. Last, in the 7 and 8 levels, let's read over key points of the rubric to understand how students might achieve these levels. The wording here is excellent research skills. They have an extensive range and variety of sources that are consistently and effectively evaluated for reliability and relevance. For example, students detail how and why they chose these sources, not just a basic Google search where they chose the first search returns. The product and processes of completing the product heavily rely on the research conducted, and students have well thought-out sources. Here at level 7 and 8, students must have some in-text citations, but there is no specific number they must have in the report. However, the citations and bibliography entries must be accurate. Let's look at all 3 strands of Criterion B, planning, on the same slide. The first strand is the student's own criteria. The second strand is plan of action. And the third strand is self-management. Again, notice the wording in the levels of achievement, starting with limited at levels 1 and 2, adequate at levels 3 and 4, substantial at levels 5 and 6, and rigorous, detailed, and accurate at levels 7 and 8. Let's examine what students absolutely must have in their report in order to score at the highest levels of 7 and 8. First, their own criteria must be a SMART goal. It also must be based on research, which is connected with research skills from the IB rubric's Criterion A. Students' reports must explain why they created their criteria with the elements it has, and those elements need to be quantitative and qualitative. To gain the highest levels of achievement of a detailed and accurate plan of action, students' reports must contain specific dates and general timelines for completion from the beginning of their process until the submission of their reports. Supervisors should easily understand the timeline students use to complete their project. Many students have already had adjustments to their projects, so those changes should be clear. Those changes should also be justified, meaning that students should explain why they changed any parts of their project, and that rationale should be clear and also based on research and time management. Finally, for students to demonstrate excellent self-management skills, they should be able to recognize and justify their strengths and limitations. The project is viewed by students as a positive, engaging experience that provides the opportunity for further learning experiences. Self-management not only includes managing time, but it also includes managing the use of technology, organizing resources, and bouncing back from challenges. Here's a sample criteria from a student who did quite well. Please pause the video if you need more time to read. His project topic was building a rocket. The criteria is clearly defined and resulted in a high-quality product. There is evidence that it is based on research, and it has qualitative and quantitative elements. In places where he notes that he cannot test a specific element of his rubric, he justified why in his report. Students may choose to use any type of criteria for their project, including one like this with a series of questions. They may also use something akin to a rubric or even just have a list of elements they will include in their product. Now let's investigate the 3 strands of Criterion C, taking action. The first strand addresses the product, goal, global context, and criteria all as one. Again, notice the bold words and the different levels, going from limited to excellent in description. To achieve a high-quality product and highly successful outcome, the goal from Criterion A should have been explained clearly and have multiple verbs to clarify exactly all of the steps the student completes in the product. For example, the student might research, design, create, and publish a work of art. The report should contain analysis and evaluation of how the goal was achieved. Also, the student must connect the product to the global context and directly related to the criteria. The student must address the product, goal, global context, and criteria. If one or more component is missing, it cannot meet the highest level. In the IB assessment rubric, Strand 2 of Criterion C addresses students' thinking skills. If we take a look at the task-specific clarification of the highest levels, 7 and 8, we see that the words analysis and evaluation are present again. In order to meet this level, students must analyze and evaluate their critical, creative, and transfer thinking skills. On your screen, you can see a list of possible ways students can provide evidence of critical, creative, and transfer thinking skills. Not all examples need to be present in the report, but the student must address the 3 thinking skills of critical thinking, creative thinking, and transfer thinking. The third strand of Criterion C addresses social and communication skills. Again, here we have on the screen a list of possible ways for students to provide evidence in order to meet the highest levels of achievement at a level 7 or 8. While each student's project will have differing amounts of communication and/or involvement with others, it is important to assess the ongoing and relevant communication and the modes of communication. Students must demonstrate an understanding of perspective, interpretation, and empathy in his or her communication strategies. Also, students have followed the format requirements for their report correctly. A list of those requirements will be included with their project submission in February. The last criterion is D, reflecting. The first strand objective requires students to evaluate their product based on the criteria they've created. On the screen, please note yet again the word descriptors for each level, from outlines in 1 and 2 to analyses in 7 and 8. To achieve the highest levels, students must elaborate and analyze the quality of their product against all stated criteria. If students do not address all criteria, they cannot reach the 7 or 8 level. However, they may still be able to reach the 5 and 6 levels if they address most of the elements in their criteria. Here is an example from the rocket sample that scored at the highest levels on all criteria. Please pause the video if you need more time to read through the sample. The entire sample report can be found on Canvas under the module titled Personal Project General Resources. This student addresses each part of his criteria, which was a sample earlier in our presentation. He effectively analyzed each part of his criteria. If he felt that he could not fully analyze a part of his criteria, he stated and/or made his best guess. He could have strengthened this area of his report by presenting possible solutions to areas where the rocket did not meet the criteria. On the right side of your screen, there is another example from the rocket sample report that scored at the highest levels of achievement. This portion of the report addresses Criterion D, Strand 2, which requires students to reflect on how completing the project has extended their knowledge and understanding of both the topic and the global context. This particular excerpt provides an example of excellent reflection with specific and meaningful examples related to his topic. Also, notice that he discusses application of the knowledge he has acquired. Continuing on with Criterion D, Strand 2, here is an example of how a student can evaluate his knowledge and understanding of the global context, connecting it to his goal by using meaningful examples, and providing detailed descriptions and insightful explanations. Notice he specifically mentions his global context. He also describes challenges in regards to innovations. This is an excellent example of reflection regarding global context. Last, we have the third strand of Criterion D, which asks students to reflect on their development as an IB learner. Students must use IB-specific language in this section. Examples include characteristics from the IB learner profile and/or ATL skills. Here, the student has chosen 3 specific IB learner profile traits. Using these traits, he has detailed how he has grown, setbacks he has overcome, and provided very specific examples. According to IB, the best reflection of all 3 was the risk-taker paragraph, as it included overcoming challenges, growth, examples, and being a lifelong learner. So now we've come to the end of our presentation. It's a lot of information to process, so please, at any time email or drop in the see Mrs. Drake or Mrs. Deal. They are happy to help. Students will be submitting their Criterion A drafts to ManageBack by Monday, November 8th. You will be able to give them feedback on Criterion A after that. If you don't know or remember how to access ManageBack, or if you've forgotten your password, there is a very helpful and short PowerPoint on our Canvas module titled Personal Project General Resources. The PowerPoint file is titled How to Access ManageBack. Also, there are 2 sample projects for you to score for practice on our Canvas page. Please remember to contact Mrs. Drake or Mrs. Deal anytime you need help or have questions or are concerned about your students' progress. To finish this training video, please go to Canvas Discussions and answer the prompt, what is one thing I learned or remembered from previous years that was important? And what are any questions I have? Thank you for listening to this presentation. I hope it was informative.